Good evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, set as we see it and frankly as well. 3,000
but it's the
horsepower.
next iteration of an existing system.
But it's a design, it's not manufacturing anything.
I think there should be, there are restrictions. You have to be licensed to carry a weapon.
Addiction, and I think that if we took a more compassionate approach, we might find more of a solution.
Radical swing of the pendulum. Now we're, it's more liberal, more progressive, more.
It's time for us to honor those folks who, send comments to it.
And good evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, set as we see it and frankly as well. Mr. Paul, how are you this evening?
I'm pretty good, Joe. Getting pretty excited about our trip to Washington, D.C.
As by the way, we're going down as representing Lynn TV, not Lynn Community TV, and we'll be reporting from the inauguration.
Reporting from the inauguration. That's going to be awesome.
It is, and they're going to, actually, who are they going to trust with the camera, you or me? Probably you.
I think, I'll probably get stuck with that duty, yeah.
Paul, we got a terrific response on a comments that you lay on me. Of course, you and I.
We both made them, but I think yours were a little bit more to the right.
And it goes that after listening to Joe and Paul about their seemingly, not their, plural their seemingly low opinion of millennials, I have to compose these thoughts. And ironically, he or she apologized for it being long, and I don't think they had to, because having read it, there's a lot of, I think, salient points made.
Without a doubt.
If in fact, I'm glad the word is seemingly low, because my grandkids are all millennials,
right?
Who I love
You're
dearly.
right, and I think we can go on record as saying that we talk about this all the time, as character being more important than, let's say, your politics or the color of your skin, things like that. You and I, we really subscribe to the belief that it's about the individual and their character in everything that we talk about. And if one individual is technically a millennial by definition, as society has defined them, we can't paint everybody with the same brush. I don't think, right? So when we talk generally about millennials, we are talking about a statistic, maybe a large percentage of, or maybe even a majority, but at least a plurality of people behave a certain way in a certain class. But we're not ever specifically identifying an individual as being like this or not. We may identify one and say, yep, he's a millennial, but not necessarily, right?
In a sense, but to be honest with you, I was sticking it tongue-in-cheek to my own grandkids, who on Christmas Day, not Christmas Day, I've told you on
Thanksgiving.
On Thanksgiving Day, while I was pining on my couch with some type of nefarious infection of sort, only being comforted by my two dogs, and I was promised a doggy bag, I didn't get it.
Right.
So I was teasing a little bit.
Right.
And obviously, the sun sets on my grandchildren. So,
right.
Look, every generation, and this was well pointed out in this terrific essay, or I should, more than an essay, it was almost like, it was enlightening, let me put it that way. Each generation, correctly noted, has its own bias.
Right, yep.
And, by
the way, can I just interrupt for a second? So for any of you folks, we'll probably be pointing out some excerpts from the essay that was written, but you really should go to, is it LCTV/Frankly Speaking of Lynn, to really read it. It's a very, very well done essay, and it really speaks to the very issues that we were talking about last week, right?
Well, at the end it says, be in my shoes, put your feet in my shoes,
right?
And see.
I would love to be 30 again.
You? I'd like to be 50 again. So, in any case, see the world from our perspective, from what we're up against.
Right.
We didn't start these wars, and they didn't.
Right.
And they didn't create the environment in which college becomes almost unaffordable. Paul, you and I graduated. Neither one of us had student debt. And you went to Northeast, and
I
went
had
to BC.
student debt.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
I had none.
I owed about $12,000 when I got out of college.
That's not that bad.
In 10 years, I paid it off. Yeah, it was manageable back then. But we talk about this all the time, and so if we can maybe just shift, we could probably talk about a lot of politics. Just
We could do the whole show on this, and that's it. Yeah.
So let's just talk about the education conundrum. Everybody needs to go to school, get a good education. If you get a good education, you get a good job, and that's not really working out, and they're getting a lot of debt and all that kind of stuff. A big problem, and I think you would agree with this, that the reason why education has gotten so expensive, the inflation of education has been far exceeds normal inflation, and it's attributable to the subsidy that the federal government puts on it, right?
Precisely.
The more you subsidize something, the more you'll get of it. So the college institutions have absolutely no concerns whatsoever about raising tuition
Because they're
8-10%
going to-
because
right.
they're going to get reimbursed anyway.
And on top of it, if they take money for research, then they automatically have to put in programs to satisfy the bureaucrats
Right.
that don't add to education. Like women's studies, men's studies, gender studies, cockroach studies, global warming studies.
Well, how about and you opined about our senator from Cambridge who Elizabeth Warren, who was a professor at Harvard University, and she taught one class and got paid $350,000 to do it.
Whoa, I think she got $375,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she gets something
Yeah.
around $400,000 to teach one
class.
and and we wonder why kids have so much student debt.
Well, I want to know whether Barack Obama paid for any of his education while he was at Harvard. That's another interesting point,
Right.
because a lot of folks get freebies.
Right. Depending on how you fill out the application.
Exactly. And Elizabeth Warren, in her own case, which we'll get to, had high cheekbones, so consequently,
She
she
checked the box.
determined that she was Cherokee and checked off that box and received her professorship on a minority quota system. You get what I mean?
Right.
Which is kind of dastardly if you think about it.
It is.
But in any case, I was going to mention Steve Jobs in this because one of the paragraphs said the job market is also terrible. To start with, many jobs require a college degree, even entry-level jobs for some reason. There's also something so ridiculous it became a joke with many looking for jobs that you need experience. How do you get experience if you're just starting? I mean, that's an interesting conundrum.
Right.
But here's the thing. Steve Jobs said to Barack Obama, he said, I need 30,000 engineers. I need 30,000. I don't expect you to educate them. All I want you to do is ensure that the public schools teach these kids how to read, write, and do math. That's it. I'll go from there. We don't do that, Paul.
Right.
Those are the basics. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff.
Because the
we can talk
special
about.
interest gets in the way all the time. I mean, we talk about this all the time. There are challenges with some of the public schools in this country, right? Underperforming schools, and
who's going to fight? Who's going to fight Trump tooth and nail on charter schools and expanding educational choices?
The teachers union.
Of course, tooth and nail.
Right.
And who's going to be right lockstep behind them?
Democrats.
Exactly. We have a new segment, folks. This is a new segment. I want you to stay tuned every week.
By the way, I mean, so the teachers union and the Democrats who espouse their support for working families and kids and all that kind of stuff, but they, that's after they take care of their special interest, which is keeping themselves in power and having a monopoly on education.
Paul, they're overseers of the plantation.
Did you actually say that?
Each week, we're going to introduce a segment. It's called Fake News Alert. Got this one, Paul? A
Yep.
Fake News Alert. And I'm going to start with a narrative. It's when people try to say something is true that isn't true. For example, the narrative out there is that there is no evidence that fraud or any irregularities took place in this election cycle. Well, Paul, I can tell you in 1960, in my first election, they were screaming and yelling all over the place about Chicago and Texas, and that if Nixon had gone to court, he probably would have been president, but he decided not to do it because it would have ripped the country apart.
Right. As
As opposed to what's happening today, where all of a sudden now they want to do a recount in Florida. I don't know why. And
I
none of these
hadn't heard
records
that.
are going to work.
Right.
So everybody has said they want to accept the result and move on and let's get together.
You know-
are doing the exact opposite, which is fake news alert.
Right. You know, this is kind of a segue off this conversation a little bit. But you know that in my first loss, I lost twice as running for the city council. My first loss, I lost by 27 votes. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see it being, possible that doing a recount would have any impact because it was electronic and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I just didn't do it. I mean, I'd like to say it was because I didn't want to, cause anybody any harm or anything like that. But frankly, I didn't see any benefit to it. I didn't think
In
it
other
was
words,
going
you were
to.
naive.
I didn't think it was going to be reversible with 27 votes. But now we're talking 10,000 votes. They're trying to 30,000 votes. I mean, it's crazy that they have to try to reverse.
Here's the predicate. I watched, what's his name, John Dickerson, on Channel 4, Face the Nation.
Oh, I don't. Yeah.
And they
yeah.
had Priebus on, and he said to Priebus, he said, how is it that President-elect is saying that he probably would have won the majority because there was a whole bunch of fraudulent votes that weren't counted? He has no evidence of that. And Priebus looked back at him and he said, but you don't have any evidence that didn't take place.
Right.
And what they're saying is, they're saying stuff without any evidence as to the fact that it may have taken place. Now, everybody has said that there's going to be several million folks who are capable of voting who are not entitled to vote because
Right.
they're American citizens.
Right.
Is that accurate?
Yep.
All right, if that's the case...
And you'll find the majority of them are going to be in the truly liberal states like California. Where
California wants to succeed from the Union.
Right.
They don't even want to put up with... They came out today, aren't they passing all types of... They're going to be a sanctuary state?
Right.
Right?
That'll be funny.
Well, do you
the
think-
National Guard at the border?
He lost California by about 6 million votes. And you can bet your life a lot of those votes were not legitimate. Fraud,
How many we don't know.
that's the issue.
Right.
But there's studies being done.
No, I know, and we
And
should wait and
it's-
see what the studies say.
Certainly. Hey, wait a minute.
Can I just say that anybody who tells me that there's no evidence of fraud, therefore there isn't any, it's a patently false statement. It's a specious argument all the way through.
But they say it all of the time.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. That's a false news alert. Liar, liar, liar. And
Right.
this is what the folks don't get because they decide what the narrative is.
Right.
And that's it.
Right. And so in reality, a false news story, in a fake news story to these folks is anything that doesn't comport with their narrative,
Precisely.
as
Paul.
opposed to anything that is legitimately fake.
Not only are you a philosopher a professor of philosophy, but you also have a deductive reasoning
Get
that you
this
should have
guy
been.
who-
You would have been a world-class attorney. You know that?
Yeah, right.
So here is the poster child for fake news alert.
Okay.
None other than the squawking squaw. Now, if you notice that the squawking
Did you
squaw...
Did you put all this this headgear on?
Imaginative, huh? Well, the squawking squaw, now get this one. She's screaming and yelling about a guy named Steve Bannon, that he is a white supremacist. Oh my God, you know what I mean?
Racist white supremacist.
White supremacist.
Anti-Semite.
And he's got to be disqualified, and Trump is this, that, and the other. And everything despicable in between.
Okay,
right?
so let's make the argument. Let's say so that's she when she sees somebody that she believes to be anti-Semitic, white supremacist, and racist, she calls them out, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so
With absolutely zero evidence, okay?
right.
Now, she has what is known as forked tongue.
Okay, so what you're saying is that she doesn't do that with everybody?
Well, somehow or another, she put her full backing behind Representative Ellison from Minnesota, who wants to become chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Now, there's one little problem. He's black and he's Muslim. But he's also anti-Semitic. They've got him on tape. He hung around with Louis Farrakhan. That's his boy. That's his fella.
Right,
You get what I mean?
Right.
He's anti-white.
So you're saying that she supports an anti-Semitic who is on tape showing that he is anti-Semitic.
And written, when he was in law school,
Right.
and written.
And at the same time, screams bloody murder about somebody who is
Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon, who is, in her view, anti-Semitic, but she doesn't have any proof of that?
Except for all the anti-Semites that all the Jewish community backs Bannon and saying he's anything but anti-Semitic. In fact, he's extremely pro
So she's lying on both counts.
on both counts. Now, on top of it, Ellison proposed that they should take some states, Mississippi, Alabama, and a
And
few
make them
others,
just for
blacks, right?
yeah.
So I could argue that that is anti-white, couldn't I?
Right.
Black supremacy. I mean, it's,
It
what I'm
sounds
saying
more like
is-
reparations,
yeah,
though,
now,
right?
and reparations on top. The point being, it gets to the point of being ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying that Ellison's a bad person. I don't know.
Right.
He has said some things that offend certain groups, okay?
I-
But similarly, how can you label ad hominem attacks against
Right.
an individual because you disagree with their policies?
I think the only one that we can definitively say is bad in this whole thing is Hiawatha.
Yes, very
Because
good term. I like that.
because she is the one who is
The squawking
as you-
squaw.
Like you said, she's the squawking squaw who is leveling ad hominems against Bannon and praise for another guy,
Ellison.
and it should be reversed.
Shouldn't be either way.
Right.
And here's the other thing. Don't start copying and squawking, it's a better word, squawking about the cost of education when she's picking up $375 to $4 for teaching one class, as you pointed out earlier.
Right.
That's part one. Part two, don't start squawking when you are and you are sitting on about 15 million, you and your husband, with never a day's work,
Right.
and you're talking about you didn't build it.
Right.
In
And
other words, Steve Jobs, you didn't do the iPhone. You didn't do the iPhone,
Do you know that just before
Nobody built it.
You know that just before she checked the box and went to work for I think it was Penn. I think it was Penn first, right? That's where she checked the box. That was the first college that she worked at, I think. But anyway, so she went there, and she went there under the auspices of she was with the high cheekbones, therefore she was, quote, a minority. By the way, anything, but her complexion or anything like that has not prevented her from getting anything in her career, right? So she's kind of...
She's a true paleface.
I mean, I lost my train of thought, but I'm going to tell you that this woman, you would think that she has been a Democrat all her life, and the important thing to remember is that right around the time that she checked that box, she was also changing her affiliation from Republican to Democrat. A lot of people don't realize it. She was a Republican, and she needed to change to Democrat, just like she needed to check that box to get into.
Well, let me put it this way. She's no spring chicken, right?
No,
She's
they
gotta be
call
in
her
the 60s.
Granny, right?
She's got to be in her 60s, right?
Yeah.
Okay. She went to Harvard in 1995, which by my quick math is 21 years ago.
Yep.
So she was a Republican until she was deep in her 40s. So it's not like it was an epiphany that took place.
Right. When she
It
was
was for her political advantage.
Right.
And that's what she's
That's
all
what's
about.
despicable about it.
Exactly.
Right.
And here's,
Deplorable.
she is in a basket of deplorable. Now here is the famous mantra of the Elizabeth Warrens of this world. Deny all, admit to nothing, blame somebody else. They call that politics. Responsibility?
Deny everything, admit nothing, and blame somebody else. And that was wasn't that the Clinton MO for 8 years, or actually 10 years? From
About a quarter of a century,
From
Paul.
1990 to 2000.
Yeah.
That's what the Clinton administration did.
And what did she do during the election? I mean, she denied everything.
Right.
She blamed everybody. Why did she lose, Paul? Did she lose because she was a bad candidate?
No, because she denied everything, admitted nothing, and blamed somebody else. And then
blamed everybody
and
else.
then everybody figured out that everything she was doing was a lie.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, actually, it wasn't that. You know what it was?
What?
It was Comey, and it was...
That's what I'm saying. She blamed
and
everybody
it was
else.
the news,
Yeah. Did she accept responsibility?
no.
Ah.
And the Democrats still haven't figured out how to accept responsibility. They're
this
trying
minute.
to figure out how to blame the Republican Party for it.
Oh, they're racist. Didn't you know that? They're despicable, deplorable people.
Yeah.
They're, they're anti-immigrant. Paul. They're misogynists, Paul. Oh, they're anti-gay rights, Paul. They're all of these things. Everybody's sick of it, Paul.
Yep.
Now, I want to go to the local level because there's a lot of folks who are deny.
Right.
Taxpayers, get on, grab your seatbelts because the Moody bond rating has gone down. We've been downgraded. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Paul, as an accountant, as one who understands financing, we went from 5.3, which is a really good rating, to 5.1, which isn't disastrous, but nevertheless, it's trending in the wrong place.
Right.
What significance does that have?
Well, they have their bonds, right? And they have a certain interest rate tied to those bonds. And I'll tell you that whether it's to refinance existing bonds, which really isn't an issue because they probably already got very low rates on all of their existing bonds, because I believe as the interest rates were coming down, they were refinancing, which was smart to do. So that's not going to be an issue because those bonds, low rate until they mature. But when they go for new bonding, the interest rate that will be attached to them is in fact based on their rating with these
So it's going to cost us more to borrow money.
Right. Essentially,
And
that's it.
if the trend continues, if our revenue source is not sufficient to cover our operating expenses, our bond rating will consistently be going down, right?
Well, I don't think we're anywhere near Chicago or Puerto Rico, but just think about what's happened to these two institutions or entities, if you will. Puerto Rico, for example, they have like $40 billion in debt and they can't make the bond payments, so they're essentially going into default. And they're begging Congress for a solution, some bailout of sorts. And
should the Congress do that, Paul?
no, they have to. See what happens is and it's the same for business as it is for municipalities and states. If everybody knows that they will be bailed out if they're too big to fail, then they don't have any disincentive to overdo it. And the reason why Puerto Rico is $40 billion in debt and they can't pay it back is because of their liberal policies, which basically didn't really care how much it cost. They just kept doing it. My guess is that they have a very high pension system. There's a lot of all the municipalities and the counties and the government down there. They're paying out a lot of money, and don't really care. It was great for many years, but now it's coming home to roost. And what we need to do is we need to have a system in place that prevents, governments from behaving that way, because ultimately, if they continue to behave that way, it will come home to roost. You talk about your grandchildren, Dave, we have a millennial here named Dave, right? Who works behind the scenes here, does a great job. I mean, his future is, and by the way, it's kind of put in this little memo here, is his future is being determined by people much older than him.
For their benefit.
For their benefit.
At his expense.
At his expense, right.
Exactly. And we have to point those things out. And that's the same thing when you have a Moody downgrade. That's passing the buck to the future.
Right. Well, in 2008 and 9, when the market collapsed and everybody's revenue, whether it was the locals, the state, and the federal government, all it went down. And then there was the stimulus to try to bring it all back, and giving money to the states. They did all that stuff to try to kind of prop it up while they were trying to get so that we wouldn't have kind of a serious depression of sorts, right? So they do all that stuff. One of the things that happened in the state of Massachusetts is they allowed the pension systems in the state of Massachusetts to extend the length of time they would take for them to fund the pension system by a certain amount of period. So instead of it's like you have a 50% funded pension system, right? That means your obligations are half covered, right? And I think the system at the time was that you had to pay it off in about 15 years. So the idea was you would say, okay, what is it going to take to get that other 50% in there? and then you divide that by 15, and it's a oversimplified approach, but that's how you would decide how much needed to go into the pension system on an annual basis. What the state did is they extended it by another 10 or 15 years or something like that, which essentially allowed them to reduce the amount of the pension obligation on an annual basis, which means it's going to take longer for it to happen, which means that, you know, I mean, it sounds good. It sounds good because it slows down the demands on the current.
But it's an unfunded pension liability. The city of Lynn has a horrendous pension liability, unfunded. There's no money in the till.
Well, actually,
it comes from taxes.
Let me tell you something. The one good thing about the pension system right now
is what?
Is Donald Trump.
Explain.
Everybody thought that if Donald Trump got elected, the world was going to come to an end. Instead, the market is up 6%, and that means that that means all the pension portfolios are up 6% too, and that goes a long way towards reducing the obligations that the cities and towns have to pay. So don't be so hard on this guy.
It's predicated on the fact that he will have a 4 to 5% growth factor in our economy. Okay,
and he'll be creating jobs.
Happen, if that doesn't happen, everything collapses.
Right now, it's a form of optimism.
So anybody who, we know that the other system doesn't work because under Barack Obama, you were on life support.
Right.
Okay? So we know that doesn't work. We know that Detroit, as you mentioned, went bankrupt. We know that many municipalities are on the verge of going bankrupt, and so on. California is on the verge of going bankrupt. The state, the whole
state. They've lost
a
couple of cities over the last.
They lost Stockton and a few others. Yeah.
Sacramento.
So the point of the matter is this: is that we are in dire economic straits. We're really floating on a bubble.
Right.
Like an aneurysm that's about to
burst.
Know,
people say, every once in a while you'll hear somebody say that the national debt is gonna soon hit 20 trillion. Maybe try to write down 20 trillion on a piece of paper. You're gonna laugh because by the time you get to the last zero, you're gonna be out of paper. You know what I mean? There's so many zeros in 20 trillion.
You will add that 10 times, Paul, because that's what the real national debt is.
That was going to be my point.
Yeah.
So, and last I heard, it was like $140 trillion in unfunded liabilities, whether it's the Social Security, Medicare, and all of the state and local pension systems. 140 trillion. So eventually, this is, it's great as long as you can keep printing money and people have faith in your system. But as soon as if anybody loses faith in our system, we're screwed.
Then isn't it counterproductive for all of those folks that are clapping and screaming and yelling and not accepting Trump's win? Isn't that contributing to perpetuating the inability to pay those liabilities because you're not allowing him to implement those policies that he feels and that many feel are going to expand?
Tightening the belt is a big part of what he's planning to do, but I think he's going to be doing it in a smart way. Did you hear the story? It was in the Washington Post. I think it was this morning or maybe yesterday that the Department of Defense did a study to determine if there was any waste that they could come up with that they could cut some spending, and they found that they could save $125 billion with a B over 5 years by doing A, B, C, D. So what they did was they buried the story because they didn't want to. They were afraid if Congress found out about it that they would lose the money, and they can't have that. So,
but can't he use that?
So he can essentially I think you have to do a lot of different things, but in a simple kind of way, think about this. $125 billion over 5 years shifted away from waste.
Yes, but he can
and put it towards reconstituting our defense system.
That's exactly what he plans to do.
Right.
Without spending a dime.
Right.
Unlike Hillary Clinton's plan.
Right.
Now, just to show you what he's done. Today, or last night, he found out that Boeing wants to build this beautiful, beautiful jet for the president.
Air Force One, right? The new Air Force One?
Yeah.
And they're going to do it in India or something?
Whatever. But more importantly,
not
the
in
price
the
tag
US.
on it was $4 billion. You know what he said? Too much. Cancel it.
Right.
Do you think Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton would have done that?
No. They would have said, I got a few add-on features that I want to include
Of course.
in this.
Yeah. So, and you know, this goes to show you the mindset. Now, Paul, here in the city of Lynn, a couple of serious proposals took place on zoning.
Yep.
That I think we have to get to.
Okay.
So what happened is that Peter Capano and Jay Walsh are taking a look at folks that want to turn around and build all types of apartment houses and multiple dwellings in their areas, you know, wards 6, 5, and 7, basically.
Right. This stems from the idea of there's a guy
It's from Saugus.
Procopio, who is going to be building a 90-something unit apartment building in Lynn, but it's going to spill into a very narrow street in Saugus. Is that? I got that right?
So, in order to limit, there's two proposals they put forward. To limit new home construction to 1 and 2 family dwellings, or not to limit, that is the question. This is like a Shakespearean combat. So the planning board, it goes for the planning board, who immediately passed the buck. They don't want to deal with it. So they shoot it over to the city council, which you could argue is not an exercise in bravery, right?
Right.
So, an ordinance, in the city of Lynn, a law is an ordinance, right?
Right.
Same thing as the House of Representatives. So one ordinance would require that the developer would have to seek approval of the council to build multi-units in portions, not all, in portions of 5, 6, and 7. Is that correct?
Right.
That's
All of 6 and 7 and part of 5. 40% of the city.
Right. But they would have to seek permission to do that.
Right.
Okay.
So,
The
so
other-
can I just say it a different
Yeah.
way? So if anybody in Ward 7, 6, and in parts of Ward 5 wanted to build a 3-family, they would need a special permit from the city council.
I find that to be reasonable, and I'm not a regulation type of guy. This city is laden with multiple dwellings. It needs the opposite.
So if your intention is to thin out the city, to make it less dense, I can see that as working. What I get concerned about with something like this is, essentially what this will mean is that you can only do certain things by right, which will have the desired effect. However, the decision to get the city council approval can still happen, and it will still happen, but it only happens to those who can convince the city council.
Let me clarify regulation as I see it. I'm fundamentally a laissez-faire type of guy. The least government, that government that's smaller, so that government
Right.
least
So
government.
then why do you agree with this?
Because I recognize another aspect. Unless you have some boundary lines, you have chaos. Things need to be contained. You can't drink water, or you can't contain water unless you have a vessel that contains it. So when I came to work today, here at the studio, that I didn't get paid, by the way, no water, I had to
Come on, Sean, we
stop.
need water.
I had to stop at a green light, and I proceeded on a red light, and I rode on the right side of the road. I'm giving up all types of freedoms for that. Those are regulations that make sense. Otherwise, you have chaos, correct? Mm-hmm. Similarly, a city that is out of balance in its housing stock is insane to continue down a path which brought them to a bad place. Agreed?
Agreed.
That's it. Now, the second and probably stricter ordinance that's being proposed is that you have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for approval for any multifamily construction. I kind of like that one, too. Now, 3 people pined in on this. So I'm going to give you a brief synopsis, and then I'd like you to comment on it.
Okay.
One is Christopher Bibby.
Real
He
estate
said-
broker. Yep.
Yeah. He says the proposals would hurt the real estate values. How? I don't know. You can tell me. He said they would chill construction of apartments, which I don't think is necessarily a bad idea.
Okay, so can I just, I know you got to get to all 3 of them,
Yeah.
but can I just throw something out there?
Yeah.
We were talking recently about how the city has grown, significantly in terms of the student population. From 2010 to 2016, we've had an increase of 3,000 students in the school system, right?
Okay.
So there has been a massive, I would say that for all those kids, there's probably a lot of parents associated with too. So in other words, the city of Lynn is growing whether we like it or not. And we're forced to build 2 more schools to accommodate that, right? Don't you think we also have the same issue with housing stock?
As far as what?
We don't have enough.
That's good. Because if we don't have enough housing stock, then we can't accommodate the influx of population that may go elsewhere.
Right, but
Paul?
they're not, but they haven't left yet. I mean, we're building the schools because we know they're staying.
Hold it. If there's no housing stock, no one can stay.
So then we don't need to build the schools?
Ultimately, we shouldn't have to build the schools if the federal government and state government were doing their job. Because the folks you're talking about, by and large, are either refugees or unaccompanied minors.
I'll grant you all of the, all the government, the state and the federal government and the United Nations have kind of inundated with all this.
So what are you saying, Paul?
What I'm saying is if we're going to have a smart strategy about how we're going to manage the growth in this city.
But the growth you're
we
talking
have
about-
to think about all the areas where growth is necessary.
But that's growth in the way you're talking about it. It's a metastasizing. It's not a positive growth, Paul.
Wait a minute. Let me say it again. Let me say it a different way. What you're talking about is taking an existing ordinance and essentially restricting it further, right? In other words, we have an ordinance in place already. There are R1s, R2s, R3s, there's R5s, and they're all over the city. And there was a lot of thought in conceptual approaches to setting the zones that we have currently. So if we were to say leave it alone, we have a system in place, right? That there are. By the way, there's not a bunch of R5s, and I think that's what it boils down to, right? If the city councilors are worried about another 100-unit apartment building going up somewhere, and they don't want to do it unless the city council approves it. Why can't they just have that apply in areas where it isn't already zoned for that? If there aren't that many R5 areas in the city, and the R5s are set that way for a reason, aren't they?
Paul, there are communities who use zoning laws specifically to maintain their individual character. Would you agree to that? Linfield has its zoning laws specifically would not allow certain types of construction in their town, correct?
Well, they wouldn't limit apartment buildings. They may limit affordable housing, but they don't limit housing.
Well, you made a nice caveat there, Paul, and which is basically what I'm talking about. You used the word affordable, which by definition nobody can tell me what it means.
I can.
Yeah, I know you can, but it's not accurate. You're going to tell me a certain formulation. Give the formulation.
If you take the approach that you have so much discretionary and non-discretionary income, if you have the ability to take 30% of your actual income, and that's enough to cover your housing needs, that is ostensibly an affordable level.
So, are you telling me that we should build apartments on that predicate?
I'm not saying that at all.
Are
I'm
you
not
saying
saying,
to me
I'm
that
not
we
saying
should build,
either or.
should apartment houses have a different range, almost like a progressive tax system? That a person that doesn't have the income gets the same apartment and pays X amount, and a person who has a little more income gets the exact same apartment and pays more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying that. So
All right, so you're hedging on it. So this new
Well,
coalition, this new Lynn coalition, they're all for this thing called affordable housing, which in effect is fundamentally subsidized housing, no matter how you cut it.
Yep.
Okay. We don't have the luxury of doing that anymore, Paul. We're overtaxed in that sense. That's why our bond rating is going this way.
Right. So there again. So let's just take the word affordable and leave it out of the equation.
Yeah.
If you take 40% of the city and you say that no more apartment buildings, no more 3 units and up in 40% of the city, and somebody wants to do a project in one of those areas that's going to be 100 units, and it's not going to be affordable, which to your point, it's going to be market rate, what's wrong with that?
Not bad. That's a step in the right direction. But
So
here's
you
the whole
sa-
problem with apartment houses, Paul. Problem with apartment houses is they congest a whole bunch of people in a narrow area, correct?
Yep.
And they have city services that have to be accorded.
Yep.
And the amount of revenue coming from that piece of property is far less significant than it is from your single family and my single family, proportionally speaking. Oh, yes, it is. The beneficiary is the owner of the apartment. That's the beneficiary.
So if I have a single family home on a 20,000 square foot lot, and I'm paying $5,000 a year in taxes, right?
More.
Well, okay, well, I'm just using
All right,
raw
use
numbers.
5.
I will use 5. And then I go to the city and I ask for a zoning variance because I want to put a 30-unit apartment building on my 20,000 square foot lot. And they approve it. I build up, I give people some jobs while they're building it, we get this nice big unit, and the taxes go way up, right? Don't they? It's not going to be 5,000 anymore. It's going to be, it might be 50,000, it might be 100,000. I don't know what it'll be.
Here is my point. 2 weeks ago, I told you I think we ought to think big. I think that we have to somehow...
Apartment buildings are big.
No, they're not. They're piecemeal. I'm talking about big. I'm talking about taking a chunk of land, and I'm talking about making $1 billion value added to the city of Lynn, not $2 million.
So are you saying rezoning 40% of the city to R2 and under, in other words, nothing more than a 2-family in that entire area is a big thinking kind of proposal?
I'm saying this, Paul. I'm saying that the parts of Lynn that you could have a field day building what you're talking about, upscale apartments, townhouses, whatever you want to call them, from Western Avenue to the harbor, okay? On both sides of the Linway. You know where the gear plant is?
Yep.
And the rest of it. Even where building 19 and a half is, where the Walmart are. I mean, that better utilization of land there would be low-rise office buildings compounded with high-rise apartments overlooking the harbor. Now, what's fascinating to me when I talk about fake news, the item will describe, you know, this project that's alleged on the Chevy site as Ocean View. Well, you know, it's not an ocean view, it's a harbor view. There's a big difference between a harbor view and an ocean view.
You can see the Boston skyline.
Wonderful.
Well,
but, I mean, they glorify it. So in an article it's supposed to be reporting, they add all of these things. Proximity to high rail, you know, rapid transit. Well, we don't have rapid transit, Paul. We don't have the blue line. We have the train, but we don't have we're going to have the ferry. We don't have the ferry, Paul. You get it? So they glorify and they try to sell the project as being great, you know, and we're going to get rid of an eyesore, Paul. There's no eyesore there. It's a bunch of grass. But you have clear view of the harbor. What's so eyesore about that, Paul?
Hurts my eyes every time I drive by.
Of course it does. No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
It does?
I mean, it's kind of an embarrassment because the Linway is a road that a lot of non-Lynn people pass regularly.
But it's not an eyesore, Paul. It's an underutilized piece of property. But it's not an eyesore. It's not hard on the eye. I mean, it's an
eyesore to me.
If you see dollar signs on it, okay? So, I'm saying, looking forward, and I would agree with you, that there should be a really good development there. But you yourself pointed out that the harbor plan involves more than just building apartments. It involves retail. It involves light industry. It involves a whole bunch of other commodities in order to work. This doesn't have any, it's only one of a whole list of things that they're supposed to be doing according to the harbor plan, correct?
Right.
So you're thinking big like I want people to think, to take all of this land that's available and cut deals. You don't take things by eminent domain per se when you can buy out somebody, right? And, you know, give them a reasonable price, and you pocket it all and you do a big project. The entire Linway, one shot, one developer. You know, and you add $500 million base to the tax base, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is a recipe for disaster. And by the way, there are no more 3-family houses that people choose to live in anymore. Those days are gone. You know, that was a post-World War II phenomenon.
People are still doing that.
Not much.
That tends to be the most practical way into home ownership.
But most people are actually looking for single families, and they will temporarily live in what is known as condos, right?
Yeah.
But as far as independently owned 2- and 3-family houses where the owner lives in it and rents out 2 floors, that's a thing of the past, in real terms.
Yeah. So in other words, it does happen, but not as much as it used to.
Yeah, it's not. So the real housing
that.
issue today are condos, apartments, as you point out, and single families.
Yep.
Now, what would be better utilized, if they were smart, is building small homes, where they take patches of land instead of building 3-bedroom jobs, where there are people who are single, who want to have their own quarters. They build these small homes, which are very economical.
Where you slide in the stove and slide out the bed, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like living in an RV.
Precisely, except it's got city sewerage and it's got electricity. You get what I mean?
Yep.
But a lot of people would like that. That would work. And this is imaginative stuff, which would generate more revenue, because each one of these units would produce $3,000–4,000 worth of taxes per unit, and people would be willing to pay for it because of the comfort, and there wouldn't be high maintenance. You know, they're like called granny pods, so to speak, right? But this requires imagination. Once again, let me go to Kings Lynn. Kings Lynn is a community within a community. It's been there for 35 years that I know of, and it's still operating, right? And it's gated community, and it has its own special resources. We can do that again at a different level. Make it commercial, retail, hotels, and the rest. That's what I'm talking about. I agree with the Lynn Harbor plan. I'm saying expand it.
Right.
That's all. And I don't think we can do it city ordinances that, you know, allow people helter-skelter to build 50 units here and 100 units there of apartments. I mean, look, they have one right down on Eastern Avenue behind Monty's. They loaded that thing up, right? I don't know how many people are there. I mean, wherever there's a piece of land, they're building stuff, and yet they say that the market is bad. Is it?
Not now. Market's starting to really turn. I mean,
So if the city of Lynn's market is good and people want to move in and driving up prices, shouldn't our tax base be increasing?
yep,
Why isn't it?
it is increasing.
Then why are we
had
having
that
problems with
conversation
bond
last
ratings
time,
and
right?
stuff? Huh?
Because they still have to, look at all the other pieces as well. It's not simply just a math equation that basically says, okay, what is the tax base? What is the asset value of all the real estate that's subject to tax?
That's right.
That's not the only factor that goes into determining your bond rating. That's one of them, and it's a big one. But there are other things too, like your collective bargaining agreements, your debt obligation to the pension system, all that kind of stuff.
Let's talk about Gordon Hall, because he's also involved in the zoning thing. He's the chairman of the Lynn Business Partnership, correct? Whatever that is.
Gordy Hall?
Gordon Hall?
Yep. Yeah, Gordy. Yeah.
He's also a director at the Lynn Item.
Yeah, he's one of the owners.
So he sympathizes with he gets a hernia, by the way. He sympathizes with some of the residents who don't want that project up there, in Ward 6, I guess it is, right? And however, he says that we need sweeping zoning should be rejected at these. So on the one hand, he says, I understand how you feel. On the other hand, he says, oh no, but these ordinances don't work.
So he does not want the zoning change.
He does not want the zoning, but he sympathizes. You get what I mean? That's like trying to win it both ways.
But where does he stand?
That's the point.
He's not really saying where he stands?
I have no idea where he stands. It's like a hernia. But he recommends that we get a city planner, as if we need one, That's another card. So then he turns on. Now this is what troubles me. Here's his boilerplate, and I would say androgynous response. He says, well, you know how we can do this problem? We can take the newly minted director, plus the city officials, plus the business community, plus the neighborhood work together. We're all going to get together, Paul, and we're going to get in the teepee with Elizabeth Warren and smoke our peace pipe, and all of a sudden miraculous things are going to happen. Do you buy that?
No, I must admit I don't remember reading that.
But anything that happens by consensus, where you have a committee, is always a compromise.
Right.
And never for the necessarily goodwill of everybody. And all is inherent with delays and problems.
Right.
That's my point. Now, along comes a guy named Mike Donovan, who I think is with the Inspectional Services.
Right.
In fairness to him, he's opposed to both ordinances. His rationale is it makes it difficult for 2 and 3 family homes to make improvements. I don't know how that's the case, but according to him, and construction of multifamily homes.
Because what happens when you change an ordinance in a particular area, you go from you know, R1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to just R1 and R2. Anybody who is in an R2, now an R2, but they have, what's the term they use? It's basically, they may have a 3-family, but now they're in an R2. So they're allowed to keep the 3-family. They're not going to tell them they can't, right?
Oh, yeah.
You can keep it there. We're not going to make you tear it down. But the moment you go and make any changes to that, it requires a special
So he
permit.
makes a legitimate point. I
Yep.
mean, I said I give him credit because he's clear
Yep.
on where he stands. Now, we only have a few more minutes. I want to go this quickly. Residency. The unions are for it. Something like 10 years. You have to, after 10 years, bingo, you can live wherever you want and still work as a cop, fireman, city worker. Is that true?
That's what they want to do, yeah.
So, is anybody for or against it? I mean, I have no idea.
I haven't, you know, I think that that's one of those controversial things that, you know, all the support or the opposition is developed behind the scenes, and a lot of the decision makers will ultimately play this thing out and see which way the wind is blowing.
I have to think about it. I have to really seriously think about it. I know that
I'm glad I don't have to make that call.
that's right, it's a tough call.
Yep.
But you know what? The whole point of this show today was supposed to be about people making decisions, courageous decisions. All I know is this. If looking forward, there's a beautiful site that you talked about down by the North Shore Community College, and if they're architecturally designed, 2 nice apartment buildings going in there that are upscale, that's a good thing.
Yep.
Moving forward. I wish that we could think on a larger scale. And I agree with you that we got to do something. And right now, Paul, I don't see any visionaries.
No.
That's the problem. You know, once you left the council, that was it.
Oh,
the
stop.
lights went out.
No vision here.
You what?
Because I'll tell you what, the vision I had was that I wanted to stay on the city council until I got off and realized it's better to be off than on.
Look, what I love about, seriously, I tease you about this, you are the voice of reason. You know, it was nice the way you laid out the case for why we need certain developments and stuff like that. You're knowledgeable and you're thoughtful. That's important. I get a little hyperventilate at times, and that's what makes things work. We got about a minute. Pedro's not going to be here next week, you know.
He's not?
No, he's off to see the Wizard somewhere. You know, I think that, I don't know if it's CNN or MSNBC, hopefully Fox. They're all looking for his expertise, and he promised to take us along with him.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So
He's going to leave Dave here.
So after Megan Fox goes to CNN, we can do the 9 o'clock show.
We're taking Megan Fox's place, as a matter of fact.
Megyn
And think
Kelly,
about
I
that.
meant,
Yeah, we should come up with Megan Fox, by the way. She is a fox. Megyn Kelly, yeah. So, we're working on going to Washington, D.C. to report for Lynn
Yeah, on the inauguration. That would
TV.
Be, it's gonna be awesome.
We'll be there on the inauguration, and we'll have our badges flashing in the press pool.
Yeah.
We'll be rubbing with Megyn Kelly, as a matter of fact. You know, show our wares. Anyway, that's about it. Until we meet again, Paul. Let's have a wonderful week.
I'm with you.